was 1999. After a very successful Donkey Kong Country series and a serviceable entry into 3D courtesy of Banjo-Kazooie, the time had finally come for Rareware to bring the big lovable primate into the third dimension. That game, known as Donkey Kong 64, released on this very date 20 years ago, and there's plenty of debate over its actual quality. But the question is, how well does the game really hold up? Here's my take on it. Rather than a side-scroller like the country games, Rare has opted for a 3D collect-a-thon adventure in the same vein as Banjo-Kazooie. However, the game does differ in some key ways, both good and maybe less good. One noteworthy change is that your progress in a level is permanent this time around. While Banjo-Kazooie dumbed out things like musical notes collected and essentially put the reset to everything not purely jigglies, DK64 retains everything. This is very good, as it means you won't be stuck to one level out of fear of having to collect every single banana or banana fairy or having to relock certain areas all over again. Another change is that rather than just playing as one character, you've got 5 Kongs with their own abilities, movement quirks, and of course their own bananas and golden bananas to collect. This can be both a good and bad thing. Good in that it offers a ton of variety, and a little bad in that you have to find a tag barrel and switch to that Kong to activate their stuff and collect their things. Well, tag barrels are plentiful enough that you won't have to search too long, and I wouldn't mind seeing a new Donkey Kong 64 entry with the ability to change Kongs anywhere you want. Bananas and golden bananas to a certain extent are mandatory to get through levels, with the bananas as payment to get to the boss and golden bananas to get through checkpoints to the next level. Thankfully, it never really gets too strict with that, as the most demanding golden banana checkpoint is just under half of what's possible to get, and the strictest banana level being 80% of what's possible to get. It does, however, mean that backtracking to previous levels to get other Kongs' golden bananas and bananas can come in handy. Well, the bananas themselves are strictly for each level's boss, so you need to stuff it into a hippo's mouth so he can lift his huge pig friend to the lock. Getting 75 nets you a banana medal. By the time you get to the final level, you need 15 out of a possible 35 to unlock a minigame to then get one of the 2 keys that allows you to face the final boss. You start out with Donkey Kong, unlock Diddy and Jungle Japes, Tiny and Link and Angry Aztec, and finally Chunky and Frantic Factory, so it doesn't take you too long to get all of them. By the time I wrapped up my first 2-hour live stream, I had just saved Chunky. Another thing you sort of have to get is coins. You needed to upgrade your Kongs with Funky's weapons, Candy's instruments, and Cranky's potions. The latter is going to run you the most, as that grumpy old primate loves to overcharge, and unlike Funky and Candy, the upgrades are individual to each Kong, but there is some good news. Unlike the banana collectibles, coins work in any level. Also, once you get Tiny's, tiny power-up, you can see the Banana Fairy Queen and get a shockwave technique. The reason why this is important is because you use it on dirt piles to get a special Technicolor coin that nets 5 coins to each Kong. That really helps, and since Funky's and Candy's upgrades past the initial one benefit all Kongs, you can just pick the one that has the most coins at the time. But back on the subject of the Banana Fairy Queen, that presents another collectible in the form of banana fairies you have to capture at a camera. Don't worry, they won't attack you. This isn't Fatal Frame. They're just hidden in each level and like to fly around. Each one you manage to capture in your nifty little magic film restores your stocks and can unlock things like rewatching Cinemax and playing against bosses again. Kongs get their own unique weapon and instrument to unlock new areas as well as dish out some heavy damage to their enemies. That's of course combined with the aforementioned potion power-ups that provide a healthy amount of variety to acquiring bananas, both the ordinary and golden variety. Then there's also mini-games and special barrels to get golden bananas, but those can vary in terms of enjoyability. I generally like them well enough, but that fly minigame can bite me. There's also one where you have to hit a golden banana without hitting the Kongs, and you basically have to guess where it's going to be because they really don't give you enough time to hit it. There's also a couple of minecart rides, some racing events of other types, and even some where you have to sneak around in a maze so you won't be hurting for variety. Yet another collectible is 5 crushers, one for each Kong on each level that drop special blueprints when you defeat them. Beating them is easy enough once you find them, just keep pummeling them until they die. Not only do you get golden bananas for each one you find, but the final area gives you more of a time limit, so make sure you pursue them whenever you possibly can. As for the bosses, 2 out of 8 are technically repeats, but they're at least given extra abilities and the rest are generally pretty original in how you go about fighting them. They can range from throwing barrels at them to jumping across pillars to hit switches of the right color to even riding in a boat on one. Personally, I found the final boss fight to be one of the most enjoyable boss fights in gaming. Not necessarily because of some groundbreaking gameplay, although the use of the 5 Kongs and their abilities is very well handled, but because of the presentation. Of course, the details there are best kept for later. You get to each level by unlocking one of K. Lumsey's locks with a key you get from each boss, after which he'll dance with joy and either break or open something for you. In case I didn't make it quite clear enough, the game has a monstrous amount of gameplay variety on the table. The controls are a little clunky, but keep in mind this was the N64 era where they were still kind of figuring stuff out, so I'm willing to give them a pass on that. They've even thrown in the arcade classics Donkey Kong and Jet that you have to complete a section of to get 2 coins to unlock the final boss area. If you can get past the slight annoyance of having to chase a tag barrel to collect each Kong's unique collectibles, and can forgive some early 3D control wonkiness, there's a lot to like here and a ton of replay value if you're looking to get everything.
I've been waiting a long time for this moment. Soon Donkey Kong and his pretty little island will be no more.
The plot of Donkey Kong 64 isn't a sequel to any of the previous games, at least not directly. Instead, it's a completely self-contained adventure. K. Rool's latest scheme to take out the Kong family is to kidnap Donkey's friends in the Golden Banana Stash and use that as a distraction to build up a laser weapon on his mobile fortress to destroy DK Isle. Luckily, his minions are incredibly incompetent and take forever in building up the machine. You don't really have any real time limits until you reach that final level, and K. Rool finally decides to use it. After being informed of the news by Squawks and reluctantly receiving help from his cranky grandfather who is named Cranky, Donkey gets out in the open world and is ready to start his adventure. To that end, Donkey Kong runs into K. Lumpsy in a smaller containment area latched to Croc Isle. Despite being K. Rool's own brother, he was locked up simply for refusing to destroy DK Isle. Donkey, of course, agrees to help him out, and the resulting Dance of Joy unlocks the first area. Now, I should mention that there are cutscenes at the beginning of each level, but they tend to be pretty silly in nature and very rarely progress the plot. While they don't tend to be plot relevant, they can be very humorous, and K. Rool's cruelty is even showcased a couple of times. Fortunately for the Kongs, Snide is also willing to help them out. He's the one who designed K. Rool's machine, but for some reason K. Rool decided he didn't trust him and now wants nothing to do with him. I guess it's his loss, because Snide agrees to help you sabotage the machine if you help collect blueprints from the Crushers. Depending on how many you manage to retrieve for him, you can get anywhere from a measly 10 to a whopping 45 minutes to shut off K. Rool's machine in the final level, so get as many as you can if you don't want to be on a complete crunch. Each boss is guarded by a very large pig named Troff and a tiny hippo named Scoff. Troff wants to unlock the door for you, but is incredibly heavy and can't reach it. So I guess the answer is for Troff to make healthier habits and become fitter, right? Nope. The answer is to stuff bananas in a trough until he can tip the scales for Scoff. It is pretty messed up condemning Troff to health problems just so Scoff can keep his selfish lifestyle, but it's just an excuse for the collectibles, so don't read too much into it. As Donkey grabs his golden bananas and frees his friends, K. Rool is sending everything he can after you. You'll be fighting Armadillo twice, Dogadon also twice, Mad Jack twice, actually this time once, then Puff Toss, and then finally a cardboard cutout of K. Rool. I guess the Kremlins were really running short on mooks with that last one, huh? After finally getting to Hideout Helm and disabling the machine, K. Rool will flee into an aircraft, allowing you to get the 8th and final key. After being freed once and for all, K. Lumpsy happily chases K. Rool's fleeing aircraft and, living up to his name, trips over a boulder, swatting the aircraft in the process. Pretty convenient that the aircraft was content to just fly around in circles, but don't question it. Going inside the aircraft, it somehow contains an entire boxing arena. Don't you just love video game logic where things are much bigger on the inside than the outside? After each Kong fights and weakens K. Rool, not even his cheating crew at the bell can save him, and Chunky's declared the winner. K. Rool attempts to charge him out of rage, but is subsequently distracted by Candy, literally getting his hindquarters kicked by Funky, gets presumably wrecked by K. Lumpsy, and is sent flying back to his lair in disgrace. With that, the day is saved, and the Kongs can go back to just doing their own monkey business or whatever it is they do between these games. Maybe Donkey will go battle with Mario some more, or take up boxing. The sky's the limit. In case it wasn't obvious by now, Rare's games aren't meant to be taken very seriously. It's a nice little lighthearted plot full of humor and even some healthy fourth wall breaking. If you expect some deeply involved story, you should have left Turn at Albuquerque because you couldn't be more lost right now. If, however, you're looking for a zany and wacky experience, you've come to the right place, partner. The plot works just fine for what it is and manages to deliver a good amount of fun. Being on the Nintendo 64, the game obviously hasn't aged entirely gracefully. Playing it in HD especially showcases the limitations of the system. However, when you consider the system it was on, I actually think the game looks pretty impressive. Banana pads actually fade from one area to another, something I wasn't able to replicate due to performance loss of drawing every frame, making it all the more impressive that actual N64 hardware was able to handle it. There are some other pretty impressive techniques at play here, such as the water in certain levels having physically wavy surfaces and Armadillo actually deforming the ground with his jetpack slams in crystal caves and jungle japes. The environments are reasonably well varied, with a tropical island, jungle, desert Aztec toy factory, damp galleon, forest of shrooms, a beautiful underground ice cavern, and a haunted castle to round it all out. Then, of course, there's a bad guy's secret base that's very industrial and foreboding. The 5 Kongs in the support cast also do a very good job showcasing personality. While enemies are obviously repeats of each other, they each manage to seem unique with their own quirks and personality traits. You know, unlike many modern games, just generic bad guys in uniforms. One notable change is that Funky Kong is no longer a surfer dude, but is now a gun-toting commando working on his next big thing. I actually kinda like this incarnation of Funky, he's got a lot of style. The game is mostly in text, but has full voice acting for the opening. Given that Armadillo had a voice in an earlier build and the intention was to use the CD drive before it was pulled, it was most likely a storage space concern. The music in each level is also nicely varied to the area, and the boss even uses a remix of the respective levels, which is a nice touch. You can very much tell it's made by the same company that made Banjo-Kazooie because their music sounds so very similar. Obviously, I'm not saying I see this as a bad thing, it just means they have a signature style and they know how to use it. As I mentioned before, I absolutely love the presentation of the final fight. There's such good build-up to it with music and hype, and the actual fight itself really does make it feel like a huge spectacle. It also makes finally winning the event despite the Kremlings cheating every step of the way very satisfying, especially when K. Rool finally gets his comeuppance. Ultimately, it's an N64 game. That means the textures are going to look like pure mud by today's standards, and the polygons are like jagged, blocky edges. If you can manage to look past that, though, you'll see that the game has a lot of charm and style to make up for the graphical limitations. Makes me really wish we got a new open-world Donkey Kong game released today. Donkey Kong 64 is a real staple of my childhood, and I think it's underrated by many people. The relatively clunky controls were pretty common for that era, so I don't think it can be necessarily blamed there, and you can still get around it well enough, especially with the ability to save state for convenience on those tricky platform long sessions, wink wink. Honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing Retro Studios tackle an open-world Donkey Kong game. I think they've proven more than capable if Metroid Prime is any indication. Ultimately, I think the charm far outweighs the cons, and it's a very enjoyable experience even to this day, although I may be speaking from nostalgia. This has been my review of Donkey Kong 64. Thank you so much for watching. It may be a little clunky, and having to look for tag barrels may be a bit lame, but 64's one hell of a game!